I'm going to share my screen, but before I do, just so you know who I am, I'm Amy. Um, I work sort of in the back end of the Spiritual Companions Trust, and I'll be taking a lot of the notes today and just helping to guide the session. Okay. Can everyone see that? Could someone just confirm? Yep. Brilliant. Thank you. So, yeah, tonight we're here to talk about the Diploma in Spiritual Coaching and Caregiving with the Spiritual Companions Trust. For some of you that might know us, you may noticed a cheeky little new logo that's going on in the corner of our presentation. So there's a lot of change happening at the Spiritual Companions Trust that we'll talk about a little bit later. But we're going to be focusing mainly on our diploma. We've been running for quite a long time now in various guises. But yeah, so let's move on. For the agenda tonight, we'll be going through who the Spiritual Companions Trust are, outlining the course, what's involved, the tutor support you'll get on the course assessment, and then we have some time for questions, and then we'll have some group silence and meditation led by Sarah Jane. And it's in the same way that you would experience on the course as well. So it just gives you a bit of a taster of what we're like and the sort of atmosphere that will be on the course. So we've got our team. So we've got William. So do you want to give us a wave, William? He's our director and founder and started up the Spiritual Companions Trust. Some of you may know him from his books and all of the different educational work that he's done within this area, and has a huge wealth of expertise in this. And he worked very hard to set up the diploma, and you'll see that if you do join the course, everything that's come from that. Then we've got Sarah Jane, if you want to give a wave. There she is. She's our lead tutor, and she's the main person that does the teaching on the diploma. She has a huge wealth of experience in this sector. I knew her from a previous work life, and just amazing the depth of knowledge that she has. And I did the course as well, and she was my lead tutor on that course as well, and is very knowledgeable and yeah, life transforming, the lessons I've learned from Sarah Jane too. And then John's not with us tonight, but he's going to also be a tutor on the course, and more on a one-to-one basis with whoever he's sort of supervising throughout the course. And we'll come on to what that exactly means a bit later. And we've also got Annie here with us tonight, if you want to wave. Annie is someone else who also works in the back end of the Spiritual Companions Trust, and she does a lot of the social media. So if you've been seeing all of our posts on social, that is Annie waving her creative wand and doing some brilliant stuff there. So that's all of us. So William, over to you to talk a bit more about the history of the qualification.
Okay. Can you switch off the slides for the moment? Great. Can everybody hear me okay? Will you give me a little wave to say that you can hear me all right? Great. Okay. Thank you. So the qualification, which I developed with Sarah Jane, she was with me right from the very beginning putting this together, just so you know that, kind of comes out of my own history to a degree. And it's relevant because it kind of sets the framework for how we understand the diploma, and my story may be similar to yours. I've got a bit of a hoarse throat this evening, so forgive me if I sound in any way a bit weird. My childhood and my story may be similar to yours. I was brought up in central London by a psychiatrist and a journalist, both of whom really loved me, both of whom were profoundly suspicious of anything spiritual or religious. But from the age of 4 or 5, I was looking at the blue sky, I was looking at things going on, and I was having for me, very clear experiences of that there was some extraordinary mystery and wonder and beauty to life. It was just part of life and it was obvious. And there was also an obvious thing in my heart that if something was vulnerable and little, it needed protection. And I think these are very normal instincts for children. And they stayed with me. I learned not to articulate them to my parents because they basically just very passively calmed me down and said, they're there. Of course, that's not quite true, dear. But the experience stayed with me through my teens, into my early 20s. And I had a successful career in publishing and as a novelist, and that didn't fulfill me at all. And I ended up doing 2 years off-grid retreat. Came back to the UK, and fast forward, I was working at St. James's Church, helping run the Alternatives program, which some of you may know. And we put on around 70 events a year with spiritual teachers from all around the world, big names, small names, and I was experiencing them all. And at the same time, I was not getting frustrated, but getting very, very curious about there being some kind of foundation to everybody's experience. Like many different cultures, many different types of ritual, many different types of worship, many different types of philosophical interpretation of the mysteries of life. Yet there was something essential there. I was a very earnest meditator at the time, Ernest Ernie the meditator, and I thought meditation was the only path. And I started an experiment called the Open Mystery School, and we met for a year together every few weeks for a weekend. And in these meetings, we explored what was actually happening inside us when we were doing whatever spiritual, religious thing we were doing. And there was one experience that absolutely woke me up. Sitting in a circle, 20 people, I said to the circle, when do you most easily connect with the wonder of life, whatever you call it? And I, as Ernest Ernie the meditator, was expecting everybody to say, in meditation, William. But the first person to speak was a woman who said, when I've got my cat on my lap. And part of me became quite quietly passive aggressive. They're there, of course, very understanding, not what I wanted to hear. And then there was a man next to her who said, well, actually, it's on my exercise bike. On my exercise bike, I go into the zone. And I went, oh, okay. And the passive aggression in me, Ernest Ernie, the meditator, did not want to hear that too. But the third person said, walking out in nature. And by the fourth, fifth person, a part of me had died, and another part of me had woken up and gone, you better listen very carefully, William, because you're hearing something that's very real. And 30 years on, we have found that just asking people this very simple question in the first place, when do you most easily connect with the wonder and energy of life? Okay, so that's when it happens for you. How do you like to describe the experience for you in your words? And what is it you're connecting with? What's your word for it? And it's that person-centered approach starts a journey of validating for the individual, yeah, the way you do it is the way you do it. But what it has in common with all of us is we have an experience that has certain elements to it which are very much the same. And we encounter very similar challenges as we try to deepen the experience, integrate it into our lives, and align it with a life that's ethical and of service. And so, a decade after the Open Mystery School, I started to explore putting this course together as a master's at the University of Westminster. And we got half the paperwork done when I realized that we're making a mistake, because anytime anybody engaged with this domain as an academic or as a scholar or as an intellectual, all of which I respect, but when you engage with spirituality in that way, you tend to dissociate, lift up into your head, and intellectualize, and you miss the experience. And I saw that happening, and I saw people going into that space and not benefiting from the experience, which is hugely beneficial at a psychoneuroimmunological level where it lands in the body, and started to move it across to being a vocational course, which, and I said at the time, and Sarah Jane and I said at the time, was, yeah, this is for a hairdresser or an archbishop. It's experiential, it's practical, and what we need to do is handhold folk into their own practice, because a lot of people never have their own practice, their way of doing it validated. And they never develop the rhythm that takes them into the depths of it. And at the same time, they don't develop the witnessing, the stepping back and reflective practice that can embrace the experience, be very curious about the experience, and that at the same time expands your consciousness. And while that's happening, something benevolent is coming in. Love, compassion, care. So it anchors in being a better person in your family, with your colleagues, but you then living it out in real life. You then start to meet your neuroses, you start to meet your own identities that want to resist it, and it's challenging for all of us. So we developed the course, and we've made many good friends on it. Many, many good friends, because we're all in the same boat, trying to do our best, and we do the best we can to treat each other as genuinely as companions, brothers, sisters, colleagues on this journey. So I went from Westminster Uni to the College of Teachers and the London University, and then we stepped out and joined Crossfield Institute and came under the umbrella of Ofqual. So we're a regulated qualification. And later on in this session, we'll have a quick look at some of the assignments, because there are, as a qualification, there need to be assignments. And for this particular course that's coming up, I mainly sit in the background. I'll lead a couple of sessions, basically when Sarah Jane says, "Oi, come in." But in the background, I'm checking that the assignments and the assessment of them is fair, and there's a kind of quality assurance going on there. I have a qualification in leading quality assurance, and I'm there in the background checking that everything works and checking that you are being supported and befriended and cared for in the best way that we possibly can, so that the course works for you. And when it comes to the assignments, which will be in about half an hour or so, what you'll find, and I'll be repeating myself then, is that we've created assignments which ask you to reflect on your experience and to write about your experience. It's not knowledge-based. There's a bit of knowledge about some of the evidence base and psychology and physiology of the benefits, but 90% of it is reflections on your experience. And so it's entwined to support you as we go along. And I think that's all I want to say for the moment. And it's lovely to see you all.
William, did you want me to share the slides to talk about the schools project or
Oh,
anything?
that's a good nudge. Here's a good nudge. Thank you, Amy.
That's all
Um,
right.
just this, it was a good idea for us. At the moment, we've got some considerable funding to, thank you for the nudge, Amy. We have considerable funding to take our approach into a national project to help anchor it into schools in the UK. Teachers, school support staff, and of course the children. And we're at the beginning of this journey. We've just started to roll it out, working with the senior leadership teams of some schools and academy trusts. And it's very exciting. It's a little bit too much work at the moment, as any of you who've managed anything like this will know. And but it's a wave of acknowledgement that what we've been doing is worthwhile and has genuine validity into the mainstream.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Amy.
Oh, you're welcome. So we're going to be moving on to Sarah Jane now to talk a bit more about the course and the structure. So Sarah Jane, I'll just share my slides and then you're welcome to start whenever you're ready.
Okay, Amy,
Yeah,
just before you do, how about I just do a little introduction about
perfect.
my background while people can still see everything. Thank you, Amy. I'll just say a bit about me, similarly to what William said about himself. My background, I'm from the north of England. I grew up in Yorkshire in a mining town, which was attached to an old, very run-down market town in South Yorkshire near Doncaster. And my parents were teachers, and I grew up in a very rural area, as most mining areas are. And so we went to Sunday school, and we went to two Sunday schools. My parents claimed to not be Christians, but we went to two Sunday schools. But what I remember being very small was being carried into a church service. Now, I know I was small because my sister hadn't been born, and my dad stood me on the Bible rest on the pews. I remember it, and he was holding me, and I think it was a funeral. And the church was very full. And I remember this very clearly, being told off for shouting out because I was waving around going, oh look, angel, 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 angel. I remember being taken out of the church for pointing at the angels. And so, and that is a very early memory. I've got others, but when I think about my spirituality or my experience, it was that, and I was one of those children who only sung hymns. So there we go. There are early recordings of me singing hymns. So I was quite a devout little thing growing up. And then life went on. I spent a lot of time in hospital as a child for operations on my cleft lip and palate, going to school, fairly ordinary childhood, still going to Sunday school, brownies, diets, all of that sort of thing. And then there was the opportunity to prepare for confirmation, and at that point, when I looked at what that entailed, I thought, I actually don't agree with this. I don't agree with this particular oath. I do agree with the principles. And so that was when I began questioning more broadly. And I realised that the way that I connected most easily to spirit, source, call it whatever you will, was out in nature. That was where I felt safe. And there was something about the wind in the trees that just took me into a sense of wonder and connection and peacefulness. And that was my way of connecting. And I didn't need to give it a name or anything, but that was it. I went to university and had an existential crisis because I found out at university that other people did not see auras. I thought everybody had this sense of energy and wonder, and I just thought everybody had it, but my parents told me to not talk about it. We don't talk about that sort of thing. So I thought it was very much like we don't talk about people's eye colour when we first get to know them. We don't talk about personal matters. So I thought that auras were in the same category. We don't talk about personal matters. It was when I was at university and people were talking about experiences. And it was one of the most shocking times of my life. It shocked me to the core that other people do not see auras. And it led to an existential crisis because it was making me think, well, what then is so different about me apart from the obvious? What is so different? Not another difference. After university, which I passed and did all right at, it was in the mid-80s and there weren't any jobs. I went back to live with my parents and my grandma noticed that I wasn't quite my usual self. And she took me to a healer friend of hers, and the healer friend just gave me some healing and helped me get over really the exhaustion of the 4-year degree. And then this healer said, I think we need to introduce you, Sarah Jane, to somebody, and I was introduced to the healer's mentor, and the healer's mentor took me on for 2 years as an apprentice. So I had a one-to-one apprenticeship with a healer trainer, and we'd go every day. I was unemployed. I was applying for jobs and not getting jobs. And after about 18 months, I got a job and went to my mentor, and he said, yes, you have to go and do this because you're meant to be in the mainstream. And I was really upset.
I'm interrupting. Sarah Jane, you have to tell them the tradition that your mentor was in because it's so meaningful.
He was an English Romany, so it was a really interesting mix of really devout Christianity matched with absolutely full-on shamanic practice is the only way that I can put it. I do not teach that path because I am not Romany, but that is the one that I learned. That was how I was trained. But the main thing that I learned was discernment, a really strong spiritual discernment, particularly being able to discern the level at which healing was needed, what it was that was agitated in the person, what was coming through, and how the healing could be done. But the main point was he sent me up into the mainstream and said, you've got to go to work, you've got to go and work in the mainstream. And so I did, and had the privilege of being trained in all of these techniques and all of this understanding, but more importantly, how I connected. And that enabled me to have a really solid foundation for my career in the mainstream. And I worked in the charity sector, education, the NHS, in public health, and then back into the charity sector. So have had a strong mainstream career, and my spiritual foundation has been a way that I've been able to stay resilient and centered in my career and also seen it as an act of service, being in the mainstream. So that's a bit about my background. So Amy, thank you. I'm now ready. We can share the slides. That's a little bit about my background, because I'm going to go on to you and what you will learn on this course. So we have 4 units. We start with you in Unit 1. We start with you. It's all about how you connect to the wonder and the energy of life, how your approach is unique to you, and some of the features that I shared with the other people on the course, who will all have their diverse approaches. We spent time really helping you understand where your spiritual practice is at right now. It doesn't matter whether you have 30, 40, 50 years of continual practice or whether you're fairly new. Everything is valid, and we really help you to deepen into your own practice, clarifying the circumstances that best support you and your own daily routine. And we help you to develop your practices further in your own way, so that these provide a really solid foundation for you. You know, it's going back to know thyself, really, know your own practices. And we take you through that in a way that allows you to really have that solid foundation for when you start to support other people. Amy, thank you. Next one. The second unit, we do that at the same time as the first unit, because we believe very strongly that you need not only a spiritual practice, but you need a reflective practice. Because you can do all the spiritual, all the psychic gymnastics, but unless you're solid in your self-awareness and your psychological literacy, then you're going to struggle to meet other people with where they are. So we help you implement your own strategies for reflective practice on yourself and how you are. And so we help you to develop that as well, so that you're really developing the core skills of compassionate self-witnessing, mindful awareness of your own thoughts and feelings, your own inner dialogue, so that you really develop the witness self. And so that you can be in that place of being able to witness yourself, your own personality in action, not in a dissociated way, but in a very integrated, very healthy, very grounded way, so that you're just sorting out your own stuff as you go along, as we are all doing. So we bring those 2 together, and then Amy, thank you. And then we look at the evidence base. We look at the scientific evidence base and the academic evidence base around the links, the obvious history and cultural links between health, well-being and spirituality. And we look at the very recent and rapidly growing evidence base around the health benefits and the well-being benefits, the mental health benefits of spiritual practice, faith and belief, whatever they may be. We look at the physiological benefits, how spiritual practices benefit your physical health. We look at how they benefit your mental health. And we look at how some of the misunderstandings have come up, some of the bad science that has arisen over time, some of the areas where there is a disconnect between the academic evidence base and what we might call the experiential or the phenomenological evidence base, and how with every generation, thankfully, everything is becoming far more oriented around unity consciousness and around the interconnectedness. And so we look at how we can share the robust evidence base and where we might still need to be aware that some people may not consider some of what we have experienced as being valid. We help you develop your own terms of reference, your own language. That's one of the things that most people say they get the most from the course is how do we even talk about this stuff in the workplace, in the mainstream, with anyone? How do we even raise the subject of spiritual practice, belief, and experience? And so you come away from this unit with a really strong, autonomous ability to know the evidence base and how it benefits others and where you stand in relationship to that evidence base. Next one, Amy. Thank you. And then finally, having looked at the historical roots of medicine and spirituality and how it sits in contemporary culture, we ask you to reflect on your own experiences of spirituality and healthcare, the differences between religion and spirituality. Religion, we define that as faith-based communities that follow one of the traditional religious philosophies. Spirituality, we see that as person-centered and unique. You might say spiritual, not religious. And we looked around the mind-body connection and how that is and is not playing out in various different medical cultures around the world. And in this unit, we also look at how you can support other people, how you can apply your learning as a spiritual coach or caregiver or spiritual companion, whichever label best fits your work in the world. And we bring these 4 units together over 3 terms. It's a qualification, and so we follow the academic term. We start at the end of September, and we go right the way through to July. We have a couple of weeks off in December and in April, and you complete, William will explain in a moment, you complete a set of assignments for each of these milestones. So milestone 1, as we're going through the autumn into the winter, that's when we look at you and your practice, and we go within, and we really develop your foundations of spiritual practice and your reflective practice as we go into the winter. And so that allows you to really withdraw into your practice and deepen into your practice. And then as we go into January, this is when we do the theoretical and practical frameworks and the evidence base. So this is where we start to look at the academic evidence base, practicing the language of sharing the evidence base as we start to emerge into the spring. And then in the Northern Hemisphere, as we go into the light half of the year after Easter, when everything starts expanding outwards here in the Northern Hemisphere, we too start thinking very much about how you will engage as a spiritual coach or caregiver back into the public realms and your life, whether that is literally your immediate community of your neighbours or through your work. I do want to say that the engagement is always about what works for the other person. We are not teaching you how to tell people to do it. We are teaching you how to be there with people and work out what works for them, and to do that in a way that is really grounded, really connected to your own practice, where you, with you, just how you are, your own presence, will support others to be able to talk to you about their own spiritual experience. I will hand over to William to talk about the assessment element.
Okay, thank you, Sarah Jane. I just want to add to what Sarah Jane said, that one of the things that we want for you is that if you were in a multidisciplinary care team, you'd be able to talk about the spiritual level of analysis and what's going on in a way that can be heard by others. And in general, we want you to find a place where you can communicate cleanly and clearly about this work, because we know that it can be a little melting pot of confusion: spirituality, religion, healthcare, medicine, mental health, all that whole stuff. And what we want for you is that the same set of skills that you have for caring for somebody, which will essentially be grounded, centered, connected, whole body listening, are the same set of skills that you might take into a meeting or a multidisciplinary care meeting, where you also need to be in the appropriate mental and heartfelt zone to do the best you can. So we call the terms milestones. And as I said earlier on, we're not looking for essays that are academic or scholarly. What we're looking for is reflective writings about your experience in relation to connecting with spirit and how you lose the connection. For example, your personal experience of what it's like to be grounded and centered, and what it's like for you when you're not grounded and centered, and what it's like for you to be heard, and what it's like for you not to be heard. And what we're looking for in the writings, and they're not particularly long, maybe 300 to 500 words. They're not long essays, but what we're looking for is not scholarly elegance. We're looking for honesty. We're looking for the ability to be emotionally transparent to yourself, and equally, when appropriate, emotionally transparent with whom you may be with, because it may be very important to someone else that you're caring for that they know something about your own experience. Appropriate disclosure. We use a online platform called LearnDash. Amy and I set this up, and she's been an absolute wizard in making it clean and simple. And you'll find that it's very, very easy to use. But doing this course, you do need to have a laptop, computer. You can't do this on your phone unless you've got magic fingers. And you'll be uploading assignments. There'll always be Word docs or PDFs, and you'll be handheld if you have any trouble with that. But you'd need a certain level of computer literacy. I think we can stop showing the slide now, Amy. Thank you. And so there's the qualification, the assessments, the reflection. One of the things I always say is if you can improve the way you stay centered and the way you stay open-hearted inside the challenges of family and inside the challenges of the workplace, if you can stay centered and open-hearted there, that's when we know that we're actually developing, because it's sometimes quite easy to go into the mode of carer with someone who transparently needs care. I also, earlier on, when I interrupted Sarah Jane and waved the flag for Romani background. I took a risk in doing that, but I'm very conscious that it's actually hugely useful for you to know that she has in her background a living tradition inside Europe that has informed her, and that provides a level of inclusivity that you might not otherwise assume. And she has also, just so you know, been CEO of quite a large animal welfare charity. So she has a huge set of skills and experience that she brings into the work. And at the end of the day, each of us is doing the best we can do as we develop ourselves in this way. And existentially, in the here and now, I think what happens when we come into the course is that we learn together. I know we've created a structure, but we haven't been through any of these courses without our own deep learning as well. And it's always an honor to work with you. So I think that's all I want to say. Do you want to add anything to it, Sarah Jane?
No, just thank you for the public praise. That was very touching. Thank you.
You deserve it. What's next?
Well, I was just going to come into that actually. Yeah, so thank you both for sharing all of that. It was really great also earlier on to hear both of your own experiences and how we got to where we are now. So the next point that we're going to be talking to is around tutor support. So Sarah Jane, did you want to speak?
Yeah, please put up the slide for this because I think it's really helpful for everyone. So, stating the obvious, it is an online course. It runs for 2.5 hours. It'll be running on a Thursday evening in UK time. And so you will spend 2.5 hours with myself and John, who's the other tutor on the course each week. We do most of the teaching as a whole group. And for the first milestone, we tend to work just in pairs or random small groups. And then as we go into the second milestone in January, then we put you into more settled groups because by that point you really have got to know your own practice, and we have a sense of who you might fit well within small groups. So we meet with you one-to-one as a tutor. You get assigned either me or John as your tutor. And in the very first milestone, then we'll check in with you about a month into the course and towards the end of each term. So you just have those check-ins in the term time, and then as we go into milestone 2, it's just one at the end of the milestone, and then again at the end of milestone 3. And that's just for an hour or so that we meet with you. You can email us in between one-to-one sessions if you have any questions or any issues. And if we find that you're going off track a little bit, we'll gently bring you back. And if anything else happens in life, then we will support you. Because I'm the lead tutor teaching the material, John will be available to give more in-depth support if, for example, you have a family emergency and you miss a number of sessions, or maybe you were ill, or maybe something comes up, you're treated in some way, not that we expect that, but it may happen. And so John is there to give more in-depth support if needed. So your tutor is there in that capacity. We don't work in tutor groups or anything like that within the course. As I say, it's only 2.5 hours each week, and we want you to get the most from that in more or less in a whole group, in pairs or in small groups. So that's how we do the support for you. And as we assess your portfolio entries, you get a little bit of feedback, and you know if each entry has been approved, so you know how you're doing as you go along. As William said, it's a practical, self-reflective course. It's not an academic course. And so you do get a little bit of feedback as you're going along to know that you're on track. But you're not getting loads and loads of I don't quite know how to explain it. William, help me out. The feedback we do is nice and simple and friendly and like we are talking to you as a person. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and we will come in and steer you back onto track if you start veering off into stories about other people, stories about other theories, stories about other approaches to this life. What we're wanting from you in this course, because it's vocational, is we're wanting to hear you talking about your experience of your own development. And if you veer off that, then you'll get gently nudged back into track.
Thank you. That's exactly what we do, because it is about your ability to reflect on your learning. You're all adult learners, and so it's about your reflection on your own learning process.
Actually, most people quite enjoy it, especially as it's not very long, and it's useful and it's fun, and it provides a good arena for catching your own process, actually.
Yeah.
It's a kind of short form journaling in a way.
I think we can move on, Amy, from that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, the next bit is sort of over to the rest of the room, really. This is the Q&A section. We do have one question. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now because you don't need to stare at that. So we've had one question that was emailed in, so we can quickly get that answered. Someone just asked, they are a memory and wellbeing guide for people living with dementia and mild cognitive impairment, and they were wondering how the course might enhance and support the offer that she already has within her role.
Could you say that more slowly, Amy? Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. So she's a memory and wellbeing guide for people living with dementia or mild cognitive impairment. And she'd like to know how the course can enhance and support what she offers within her role.
Thank you.
Well, I'll start by talking about her presence, because the course will really, I'm going to say them, the person, so that so it will support them to really develop their presence. And so it does not matter whether somebody has cognition, is able to interact, and they will be able to bring a presence that is even more caring, compassionate, kind, very anchored, very grounded, very reassuring, caring presence. Now, that sort of work, as we all know, is very demanding. Caring for people with memory loss and dementia, it's very emotionally and physically demanding work in terms of keeping on showing up and staying present. And so the course will also resource them to top up their own connection, top up their own resilience, top up their own ability to reflect and their self-compassion. And by them keeping it topped up, they'll be able to keep showing up for the people and the loved ones with whom they work. And it also gives them a qualification to take into their workplace or into their volunteering, that is a regulated qualification. So it's really useful CPD as well.
I'd like to add something to that. Anybody in a caring role knows that they need time off to self-care and not burn out. One of the things that the course gives people experientially is that people know better how to retreat and look after themselves. Because one of the things about a spiritual approach is that you get your fuel, you get your re-energizing, you get your inspiration, you get your heart filled from being connected to the wonder and energy of life and allowing yourself to receive it. And that's what real retreat is, and that's what a really good sleep should be like as well. And carers often burn out. We know that. People at the front line in social services, medical medicine, education, they burn out. And one of the things you will get from this course is a 1 year rhythm of being handheld into taking care of yourself properly and resourcing yourself through spiritual connection. And for those of you who have a left brain, I don't really believe that number. There are now moving towards 10,000 peer-reviewed scholarly papers, mainly out of the sociology of medicine, which point directly to the mental health benefits and the physical health benefits of spirituality. But you need to know how to do it. And a lot of you who are carers will be used to self-sacrificing for other people. And we admire that and we support that, but we want you replenished and looked after. And we will help you do that.
Brilliant. Sarah Jane, did you want anything else to reflect? No? Brilliant. I think that really summarises it so perfectly, actually, what you both said. It's so important that from my own personal perspective of the course, just learning how to take the time away, like you said, William, to retreat when you needed to, and to be that presence. And it kind of takes me back to what you said earlier, Sarah Jane, as well, about being of service in the sort of mainstream, and being in the mainstream myself, that it was so useful. So thank you for sharing that. So I'm just reading the comment from, is it Belen? Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. What is your aim offering this course? Are you doing it for the greater good, for instance? Thanks.
Why are we doing it, Sarah Jane?
Because we know there's a need for it. And the need is simple. That on the one hand, people need a place to be able, particularly spiritual, not religious folk, need a place where they can develop their practice that's unique to them with like-minded people. So that's on the one hand. The purpose of the course is to really support your own unique spiritual development, your unique connection, however you understand that. People need that in their lives, and they need a place where that is validated and recognised, as William said earlier. And then secondly, I always say this at the beginning of every session, actually, the purpose of the course, on the one hand, it's your own spiritual development as you understand that, and it's the skills and the knowledge to be able to support other people in the mainstream, in the workplace, in the community, wherever you meet people, in your family, informally and formally, and the course enables you to bring the two together so that we really hope that you feel like there's a really we you feel that your purpose in life is coming through you. No matter what you're doing, you're able to be present to yourself and to others. I keep going on about that, but I just think the world needs mature, spiritually literate people, particularly at the moment when, I am just constantly reassured by the generations of young people who are coming through right now, and genuinely believing that we are going to find a way through the mess that we're making in the world right now, because the generations of younger people coming through are bringing such integrity and such insight and sense of community and unity that, we all need people we can talk to about the deeper meaning of our own lives. Thank you for coming, Darren. Thank you. That's why I think we're doing it, but then that's why I think we're doing it.
Yeah, and I've got to add just a little dimension to it. There's that very cynical perspective that people teach what they need to learn, isn't there? And I'd like to reframe that as very, very often people teach what they love to learn. Not need to learn, but absolutely love to learn. So in the development of this course and the teaching of it, we're learning a huge amount about the subject itself and people and ourselves. We love it as a subject. And I have another long-term motive, which is I would like in the long term that spirituality, like how do you connect? What did you do that connected you, to be as normal a part of everyday conversation as what sport did you do? What did you eat today? What did you watch on television? How did you connect with spirit, whatever you call it today? Did you get a good buzz? Have you had enough rest? I would like that to be part of the normal conversation, and I would like it to be removed from any implications that you need to get into some kind of belief box that will contain you, that it's something freeing and liberating as a conversation. I think there's a Reformation 2.0 happening at the moment, and that spirituality, spiritual not religious, is part of its becoming, and we're part of that.
Thank you. So we've had another question from Peter, and he asks, you talk that at the end of the course, participants will be able to be of service in a workplace. What do you think that would, sorry, I've read that wrong. What do you think would be the specific benefits they would be providing?
I'm happy to start on this, William.
You're better than me on this, actually.
Oh, well, I'm coming to you in a moment on the schools project, so you can mentally prepare for that. I'm not being facetious, Peter, when I say it depends on the workplace. It depends what you mean by work. So let me give some real world examples. So we have had people on the course who have been volunteers in a local hospice, and they have not been pastoral care or chaplaincy volunteers. They have been, people who sit with people who are in the hospice, maybe when the family can't be there. And so they bring an ability to talk about belief, meaning, life purpose, an ability to talk in a good human way about family, the challenges of family, hope, all these things that we hear about, holding hope for people, but nobody actually trains us in the language of doing that. And so an example is just the ability to give spiritual care and really talk about the other person's own sense of belief, their journey through life, how belief has changed, where they are right now, what they feel is coming through for them in their lives, even if that is as they approach the end of life. In a very mainstream work setting, the sort that I work in at the moment, as William said, I've worked in some quite large organisations in positions of responsibility, and so I've been a line manager to people and a line manager of line managers. And so those things that come up in the workplace, like bereavements and illness, it's always given me a way of being more able to know what to say in the moment to people, to open up a conversation about spirituality. That's how Amy and I met. We sat opposite each other in a particular place of work. I didn't know Amy other than that's Amy from the campaigns team, and I sat opposite her. We talked about work, but then there were moments when we just knew that we could start a conversation about something else, about belief, spirituality practice, meditation, and things like that. So it just gives you an easy way into an even more full but boundary way of talking to people. Now, for some people, this is CPD around their roles in particular. People in, you name the role, it extends their capacity in that role, and you might say the benefits and the value that they bring. It gives people just more roundedness, and at the same time, one of the things that we do on the course is we bring in guests every week in the first milestone, and they tell you what they do and how they do it, and it's so many different ways that people use these skills, and the benefits that they bring. So it really depends where they are, but most specifically, it's this spiritual literacy and their ability to be grounded, centered, and well-resourced within themselves to keep showing up in whatever it is they do. I'll hand over to William on the schools.
Yeah, it kind of feels that we're coming towards the end of it. I don't want to go on too long, so I may speed up how I talk. We have a lot of experience of working with people in the hospice sector and people working in education. And I reckon at this stage in my life, I can go into a school or I can go into a hospital and I can feel immediately whether the CEO of that hospital, the head teacher of that school, has a calm and a big heart that reassures their staff. Working, in one particular hospice, I trained all the staff, and one of the conversations I once had was with just the nurses, and we were talking about the fact that they could, as they walked the ward, they could have in their head, especially if they were short-staffed, they could have in their head, oh, there's not enough people on staff, I've got to get through these beds in a certain amount of time, I'm going to need to check the information on that one, and then I'm at a particular bed and someone's in distress. And they could pause and give that person the body language and the attitude of care that reassured them whilst at the same time they were thinking about what else was going on in the ward. And they had the skill of being able to move, give care, and be reflective at the same time. What they didn't have was the skill of then nourishing themselves so that they could carry on this work. And they would often go home and be in a terrible mood and lose their temper at home. In the classroom, in any business, what you want is you want colleagues who are good-humoured and who know how to listen and know how to be with you and can see the way changes are happening in the space, and at the same time, they themselves, authentic to the kind of person they are connected to an inspiration that's greater than themselves. And they can lead in a way that's reassuring, maybe, or stimulating, or sometimes challenging, but always held. And I'm blah-blahing now. That's me, reflective mind switching on. So I will stop blah-blahing.
It was really lovely though, William. And just because I really wanted to quickly add to this one, actually, because this is how I've found it most useful doing the course myself. But I've worked for various different charities, and the biggest thing that I took from the course was how to bring that calm presence into like huge big meetings where you might be having, like some of them, there was lots of arguments going on and debate on which way to do something, and they could get quite heated. But if you could just be the calm in the room and to listen at a level that you can understand that sometimes two people might be saying the same thing but with different words and thinking they were disagreeing when actually they weren't, and just being able to step in calmly and go, oh, I think I can hear you both on this. And this is where I think we might need to go next, and being able to bring that calm sense. And as William said, connecting to something beyond yourself in those moments as well. Like sometimes it just feels like the right thing to say comes from the air. So that's what I found really helpful in a workplace.
Yeah. And the big thing there is maintain the connection, but be fully embodied and present.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not spaced out, not dissociated, fully present.
Brilliant. Does anyone else have any questions? I can't see anyone waving or anything either. Well, if you do have questions afterwards, do just drop us an email, and we will answer. We've just had one on the financial investment from Larissa. I can't quite remember the exact amount now, so William, you might need to remind me, but it's
£2,790 UK sterling.
Yeah, I would say it's worth about £100,000 worth of therapy. Look, frame it that way. Frame it that way. You know, there's a wonderful saying: one good meditation is worth a year's living. Right. So just frame it in terms of what a therapist costs and how much you're not going to have to pay in the future.
And divide that by the number of hours that you've taught.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay, well, if no one else has any questions, then Sarah Jane, did you want to lead us into a meditation?
I will. A really short one, just to finish, short, 2 or 3 minutes. This is the sort of style of thing that we do often at the start or just when we're settling, but I'll do this to finish this evening. So we just start as we always do, we just allow our bodies to be at ease, however that works for you. There's no special posture. Just allow your body to be at ease. Standing, sitting, supported by whatever it is that's supporting you, and just be aware of that support. Be aware of being held by the chair. Your body knows how to be at ease. It's like being in your favourite cafe or a place where you might watch the world go by, or your favourite chair at home. You just allow your body to be at ease. Becoming aware of the weight of your clothes, maybe the fold at your elbows or behind your knee, the fabric, where it meets the shape of your own body. Behind your back, between yourself and the chair that you're on. And as you settle into your body as best you can, just become aware of being supported by the floor and the connection to the earth, which extends out in all directions. You are well supported by the earth. And if you wish, you can send down some imaginary roots to connect you with the living earth itself. You feel that sense of being at home upon the earth, profoundly supported by life. And then very gently coming back to an awareness of yourself, and bring to mind the way that you best and most easily connect to spirit, however you call it, whatever name, the great mystery, wonder, energy of life. You might imagine the ways that you do that if it's not normally sitting like this. It might be a prayer or a mantra. It might be thinking of your favourite place. Just allow that sense of connection to arise within you. And your heart is gently opening as you just allow that connection, just allow the sensation a little more. You're just opening to yourself, just like you're smiling on the inside to yourself. You just allow yourself to be in that connected, very gently open to yourself, all that you are, all that you have been, and all that you are yet to become. And then staying in the silence in your own unique way, gently and without effort, send goodwill and peace into the world very gently, very naturally, just allowing peace and goodwill to flow through you into the world. And staying in the silence, just for a moment longer. And bringing your awareness back to the center of your own being, to your own self, your own edges of your own space, your own body, becoming aware of your body, sitting, supported, held, and just releasing that sense of connection and coming back to yourself. Maybe just wriggle your toes and your fingers and without looking immediately at the screen, just take in your own environment for a moment first. Maybe the corners of the room so you orient into your own space. And then, if you wish, looking at the other people on the screen so that you can just for a moment acknowledge their presence. Thank you all very much for coming this evening. It's been lovely to see you. Thank you for your questions and your attention this evening. I'll just hand over to Amy to finish.
So thank you so much for everyone for coming today. It's been such a pleasure to have you all here. I hope you've got everything you needed from the session. You'll be getting an email within the next 48 hours with the slides, a recording of today's video, and also the answers from the FAQs. And if you've got any questions in the meantime, do email. My email address should be on some of the confirmations you already received. But yeah, thank you so much for coming, and hopefully we'll see you soon.